don't know half of you as well as I should like, and I like less than half of you half as well as you deserve. This is Standing Out. I'm your guest host, Matthew Leffler, and this is the 111st episode of Standing Out. I am so excited to have my very special guest here today. He'll be joining us in just a moment. You'll get to meet Matthew Goor, the Chief Operating Officer of Contract Leasing Corporation, CLC, a big leasing company. We'll talk about that in just a minute. And without further ado, as always, thank you for letting me be here, Trey. I hope I do you justice. Let's welcome in Matthew Goor.
Hey, everybody. How you guys doing? Hey, Matt. Good to see you.
It's good to finally talk with somebody who shares a common interest, which is the name Matt. How you doing, sir?
I'm doing good. I'm hanging in there for a blistering summer. So
it's over now. It's all going downhill. We're going to get ready. I am so excited. So tell our viewers a little bit about yourself.
Yeah. So Matt Goor, family owned and operated business until very recently, which we'll touch on shortly.
Oh, we're breaking news today, folks.
Yes, we are. News. I've been in the business since I was 16. I'm 30 now. I'll be 31 in a month. But I have been around trailers my entire life. I started in the shop. First thing I did was actually paint the bathroom for our mechanics. That cone of paint is still there, and it looks as crappy as it did back then. I then moved into, accounting, sales, you name it. I've done it at our company. And I've been at the company now full time for about 8 years after college. So, now I'm primarily responsible for pricing and procurement, as well as national account management for a lot of our large house accounts. But it's been a pleasure working in a family business and being able to learn from my father and just honestly be able to be around your family more often. Not everybody gets the opportunity to see their parents as much as I do. And that can be good and bad, but most of the time, fortunately for me, it's been good. So
I'm with you there. I started off with my father's company when I was like 14 or 15. And what we were doing was we would take the scrap metal and then throw it into the hopper. And we had a trailer repair business. And it was so hard to do. And I learned later on that it was actually forklifts that they typically use to do that. And my father was just trying to put me through my tests. But I worked with my dad back in 2012. And what I did, Ingrid Brown, oh, I love Ingrid. Ingrid is phenomenal. Shout out to that. But what I did was I worked in accounts payable. Then I worked in billing. Then I worked in account management. And you got a kind of a holistic approach of what your company does. So tell me, what does your company do?
So we are a trailer lessor in simple terms. So we have by the end of this year, we'll have about 18,000 assets, primarily dry van trailers. But we've moved meaningfully into the container chassis space over the last several years. Always offered container chassis as an ancillary service, but really made a meaningful investment in that about 3 years ago, bringing on an executive vice president of intermodal who formerly worked for FlexiVan and Maersk throughout his career. So that's been a big move for us, and those market conditions have been incredibly favorable. A lot of tailwinds in that business. I think the statistic about a couple years ago was 500,000 chassis needing to be replaced in the American pool. Right. So again, we've taken full advantage of that and plan on continuing to do so. But again, we're an equipment lessor. We're full service provider, so we do maintenance in all states besides Alaska, Hawaii, and Puerto Rico, but no one counts Puerto Rico yet.
But maybe 51. Yeah. They're working on it.
They are working on it. Been working on it for a while. But
what I love about your business, so trailer leasing companies, these are an organization. So we know about shippers, we know about brokers, and we know about carriers, but we don't really talk about the equipment owners and especially trailer leasing companies. The trailer is where all the things go. All of the things that you buy and want are inside of that box. And it's incredible to see you guys have grown to almost 18,000 pieces of equipment. That growth has got to be stressful. How do you deal with it?
So, interestingly enough, we were fortunate in securing good talent. I mean, that's really all it comes down to, right? And, that's certainly not because of me. Actually, one of the things I'm probably worst at is hiring like my father. But we actually hired an HR manager who's just been fantastic for our recruiting process. And we've just brought on some really good people from the industry, veterans who've been around the block. And by virtue of kind of building out that bench and, with the advent of obviously our financial partner and our equity partner that we've brought in, that's going to really kind of springboard us into the next echelon, which is kind of the plan. I mean, this is a very capital intensive business. They're big assets, they're expensive assets. They're twice as expensive as they were 3 years ago.
That's right.
That's right. With adding another kind of with adding the chassis product offering in a more meaningful way, we were going to need that capital. So, stressful is one word for it. I think we're more excited than anything right now because we've really spent a lot of time over the last couple of years with some of the lull that's been involved with the lack of availability of continuing to build out our team and, strategize on how we're going to, grow as things start to open up again. But these market conditions, while they have been constricting, in some cases have been obviously very favorable, and utilization's been over 99% for 3 years straight. So, ultimately, I think we're really excited, stressed and excited, and ready for this next chapter in our story.
Let's talk about the breaking news. So you have been a family-owned business since when? And tell us about the transaction. Tell us about the deal.
Yes. So we have been a family-owned business since 1991, which is the year I was born.
That was the year my father founded his business too. 91. Absolutely. Absolutely, man.
I feel like I didn't know that, which is
crazy. Well, we're learning new things. I didn't know you were 30. I thought when you get to be my age, like, let me tell you this, I'm 37. When you get to be my age, you have no idea how hard it is to put socks on. You'd be like, oh, I thought that'd be easy. No, it's not.
It's hard for me now. So, so the transaction. So we've been running a process for about a year. We closed on it on Monday, so the timing of it is interesting.
Is there a press release out yet?
Yeah, there is. There is.
We'll make sure to push that in the show notes when it's all said and done.
The company who acquired majority share of the company is Wafra. They are an infrastructure fund based out of New York, with their headquarters in New York. They have $33 billion under management. They're involved in rail car, aviation, sea containers, et cetera. A longer investment cycle for sure, which was really well aligned with, what we were looking for. We weren't looking to kind of just put a bunch of debt in the books like they're which is one of the stigmas of that industry. But we're really excited to work with them. They're smart folks. We feel well aligned, and they're going to be a huge part of our growth and our ability to kind of, again, move into that next echelon and become, a national equipment provider. Right now, I would say we're probably more super regional, but we're looking to change that over the next 5 years for sure.
What I love about this is you said infrastructure, and trailers are infrastructure. These are mobile warehouses in some cases. And for those who are following along and know some of the facts about trailer leasing companies, so there's about 5 million trailers in the United States, somewhere in that range. They vary. Some numbers can say less than 4 million. But one of the biggest trailer leasing companies today is a company called Extra Lease, owned by Berkshire Hathaway. What that means is that trailers are incredibly important for the movement of goods in this country, and not owning trailers, but able to have access to them is incredibly important. And as you go through this idea of like autonomous trucks and all the other things that are really fancy, you have to have smart trailers. That is fascinating, dude. I love that. Oh, I'm so excited for you.
Thank you.
So what does that mean? Like, did you enjoy the process? I mean, I sold a business myself, and I loved it. It was amazing. I had a great experience.
I mean, I learned so much, and and it's interesting, right? I think by virtue of going through this process, and I think it's one of the things we're most proud of, you kind of find a lot. I think people tend to find their skeletons because, I mean, going under the hood is an understatement. I mean, it was a year of providing information, giving management presentations, which was just a tremendous experience, and I am so thankful to have been a part of it.
Did the due diligence team do like a pre-trip on every trailer, you think?
No, they kicked the tires, but it was more financial due diligence, to say the least. Absolutely. Our CFO has had a rough year. He's definitely doing a lot of the heavy lifting.
Well, I mean, I love the point you talked about with like the amount of equipment out there. So in talking about chassis, if my numbers I remember are correct, it's like 40% or more were built before 1997. So chassis that are out there are, in many cases, refurbed upon refurbed upon refurbed, and you're bringing new equipment to the market. And there's a couple companies I know of that are getting big into intermodal, some like Walmart and Amazon, to name a couple. So it's fascinating that you're able to capitalize into the intermodal space. What have you learned about intermodal that's been surprising for you?
Yeah, so interestingly enough, how wildly underserved the industry is. It's unbelievable, which has really been low-hanging fruit for us. I mean, we pride ourselves on our customer service and being customer-centric. And I know a lot of companies throw that around, but, we kind of live it, by virtue of being a family business. Our largest customers have been friends and our relationships for 10, 15, 20 years. But ultimately, what I think we learned is that, the customer, the consumer in the chassis space just is so resigned to the level of customer service and the quality of equipment that, when we come in and we're offering new equipment and equipment that has flexibility, like a 2040 extendable that allows them to be more efficient, there's a real competitive advantage there. And again, a lot of these operators are moving away from the pools because there is a better way.
That's right. That's right.
The pools have kind of dominated that space since forever. And the reality is you go to the port, and now more so than ever, the driver's time with, electronic logs and hours of service. And on top of that, with how congested the ports are, time has become so critically important. And by virtue of having a new chassis that has an extendable mechanism that can hold a 20 or 40 foot container, you don't have to get back in line. You don't have lights out.
Yeah.
All that stuff that causes drivers to lose so much time at the port can really be taken out of the equation by having this new equipment that has this flexibility. So that's what we've been targeting.
I absolutely love that, because like I did, my team was doing mobile maintenance at the various ports and rail yards, and you'd have these pool chassis, and I get the pool. So for people watching who don't know how pools operate, think about it like you kind of subscribe to it and you get access to the chassis. You don't know which chassis it's going to be. You don't necessarily know if it's been maintained. And most drivers that are pulling from the pool, in some cases, will have a bag. And in that bag, they'll have a bunch of lights, and they'll replace the lights when they pick up the chassis because some of the lights will be missing or broken or whatever. And then you have companies like JB Hunt or Schneider, or I think Werner maybe too, that has their own chassis. And so they have their own pool. And so their stuff gets unloaded faster. Sometimes it's better maintained. But for a company that doesn't want to own the asset, but wants to have access to new equipment, you are bringing something brand new to them. Literally a brand new chassis. And I can imagine the value for your customers and that peace of mind, knowing my driver is going to get an asset that works, that's DOT compliant and new.
But just think about how low the bar is set. I mean, it's unbelievable. It really is.
No, you're right.
It's been really fun bringing our level of service to that, that industry, and developing these new relationships. And quite frankly, as far as I'm concerned, I've really enjoyed learning about a new asset class. I mean, it's funny, you talk about trailers and how important they are. I mean, again, they've really become the leverage point with, driver shortages and all the other issues. But ultimately, at the end of the day, we've worked very hard to try to figure out how we're going to ultimately bring our level of service to this new industry, or this new industry for us rather. And when you look at the trailer asset, it's so simple. People look at it as a box on wheels, but if you could ever find something simple, which I didn't think you could, it's a chassis. I mean, there's no floor.
There's no box. There's no panels. There's no doors. Well, Nico Brown was just in the comments, and he mentioned how obsessed you guys are with your customer. And that, I'm going to tell a brief story. How in the world did Matthew Leffler meet Matthew Goor? And it's because of a mutual customer. The reality was my company was a maintenance provider for some of the largest for-hires in the country. And for-hire carriers, when peak season comes around, say, we need trailers. And they don't necessarily want to own those. They want to borrow them for a period of time. And that's how we first got connected. I was doing maintenance for a mutual customer of ours, and we got a chance to bond. And we bonded over working for our fathers, which is great all the time, never bad. And our care for these boxes. But to your point, like, trailers are the differentiator today. You talk to the freight brokers out there, and they're talking about trailers. The shippers are talking about trailers. So you guys are in this amazing place. And I'm so excited for the new transaction. Now, there's another new transaction, I guess we could say, that you had. You have entered the world of parenthood. And that's something that I'm very passionate about. I have 2 boys myself, twins on the way. Tell me, how are you enjoying it, my friend?
It has been an absolute blessing and a blast. Just incidentally, we are a fortunate couple in the sense that our daughter is sleeping through the night, and she's a few months old now, which I've come to find is a unique situation. We were at a family party or a party for a family a couple weekends ago, and there was a lot of young families there. And I told a couple dads that she was sleeping through the night, and I didn't even know them that well, and I got FU'd a few times.
Well, you are in New Jersey, so that is the typical language.
Exactly, but it's been fantastic, and thank you for asking.
The best job I ever had is being a dad. I mean, I love being a father, and my favorite memories with my oldest son is going to our shop and having him climb inside the trailers or sit inside the yard dog, because they love this equipment. So hopefully your daughter gets a chance to enjoy these things. I will tell you, I've known several fathers that have had children that sleep pretty well during the first 6 months. and then things change. So let's watch, let's be careful. And I'm eagerly awaiting to see how, year one goes and how year two goes. But man, I'm so happy for it. It's a great blessing. So I'm so glad for you and your family to have a little daughter. That's amazing, man.
Thank you. Thank you.
So let's talk about smart trailers. Like everyone talks about smart trailers. Everyone has a different definition. What is the smart trailer?
So a smart trailer is a trailer that actually provides analytics and is connected to the Internet of Things, I would say. So that's really what a smart trailer, I think, is in theory. There's been a lot of talk about this on a number of levels, and a lot of companies have started to kind of move towards providing this technology. Hendrickson and Meritor have started to offer, TPMS systems, which is the actual pressure monitoring to be able to see the data. Because, again, the interesting thing about tire inflation systems is that everybody wants them and they have a clear ROI, but you can't really tell if they're working or not if you don't have the data. You can,
That's
but
right.
It's not very actionable. So I think TPMS systems are kind of the first foray into the, or first real meaningful move towards the smart trailer. But, it's all the way from sensors to test that you can pre-trip the lights from a dispatch office,
Right.
lock and unlock glad hands from a dispatch office.
That's cool. That's very
so
cool.
that'll allow, for a drop trailer account, that would be a very effective way to assure that the right carriers are hooking up to the right trailer. And just driving data in general, the integrity of the air tank pressure. I mean, Phillips Connect actually, incidentally, has developed a lot of sensors and Phillips Industries has made a very meaningful investment in telematics, and they're pushing that product line pretty hard. But the data that they're able to provide, while it's relatively novel that they've moved into this, looks like it's going to be really valuable. And I'm really excited to see how that continues to develop over the next several years. Ultimately, we're a little hesitant to get too invested in it too quickly, just because we have some concern about the initial obsolescence of that technology and how it's going to work. We're a fairly conservative company. I don't think we want to be an early adopter necessarily.
Fast follower. Good to be a fast follower.
Let the Berkshire Hathaways do that. But ultimately, it's an exciting thing. And I think, as the younger generation starts to take over more meaningful roles in management and making these decisions, folks like me and you who kind of grew up around GPS tracking,
that's right.
And I don't go anywhere without turning my Waze on, because it, tells you if there's traffic on the way, and that saved me countless times. So, a lot of the folks in the business now, and who have been for a long time, they're pen to paper, and that's how they've always done it. But as we kind of move up in our roles, this smart trailer technology, I think, is going to become more and more important.
Well, I love thinking about smart trailers, because I talk to my father about these things all the time. So when he was at Roadway and this first of the year, you'd go out and you do a live inventory of every single trailer you had, and you'd have a ratio of maybe one piece of power to 7 to 10 trailers. And the only way you knew where anything was to get eyes on it and write it down. Fast forward, then you have these telematics come out and say, we can tell you twice a day where your trailer is. And people were like, that's amazing. That's amazing. I want to buy that. But to your point now, you can know every 4 minutes where the trailer is. There's load sensors, there's temperature sensors, there's the tire pressure monitoring systems you mentioned, there's fault codes about the lights. And the false reads are very, very problematic. And so we won't go into the bad data that comes out of these things. But with Phillips Connect, you see it with Fleet Pulse by Great Dane. You see Drove, which is a new player in the telematics space for trailers. You cannot have autonomous trucks without a smart trailer. You have to have it. And so I think that as you guys go down this path, you are allowing your customers to a certain extent to try new things, because you have them on your equipment, at least like the telematics that can tell you, where it is and some positional data. So it's a fascinating topic. And I love to see how it goes over the next 5 to 6 years, because I'm sure we're going to have a lot of really big changes.
Yeah, no question. I mean, again, I think it's going to be a slow transition, though. I really do, because, we're not the only people who are concerned about obsolescence. And there's a lot involved with some of these sensors. I mean, I've looked at the installation. I mean, it's pretty in depth. And again,
pulling out the front ply liners, running the wiring harnesses. Oh, absolutely.
I think some of these larger fleets are gonna pilot it, and we're gonna find out very quickly, how well it works and how valuable that data is. And I'm really interested to see what comes out of that.
We got a question from the audience from Jeff Dickinson asking, who are some of your bigger competitors in the chassis space? He mentions DCLI, that's Direct Chassis Link, which has a lot of chassis, mainly on the pool side. But are there competitors that you think about when you're looking at chassis today?
Yeah. So, I mean, as far as the big three IEPs, DCLI, FlexiVan, and Track, we're a speck of sand at the moment, and we'd like to keep it that way for the time being.
That's right.
We're not really on their radar, and we'll probably have 5,000 chassis by the end of this year. They've got thousands of chassis in many cases. I think Flexi's the smallest of the three, but ultimately, when we go out to market, our strategy is a lot different than them. They're buying 40s and 20s, primarily 40-foot chassis. For them to go out and buy an extendable chassis, they'd almost be cannibalizing their own business because they do lease to the pools. And why lease one chassis when you can lease two? So it's a little bit of a different approach. And again, they are the ones who are going to continue to refurb these chassis because those things have been paid off for 10 years and they're clipping coupons at this point. So again, they have a very different, from a profitability perspective, from a product offering perspective, they have a very different approach as of today than we do. And so the ocean's fairly blue as it relates to that.
I think it's fascinating that we have so much stuff that comes overseas, so much of the manufacturing capabilities of our country. There's some, but most of what we bring in, it comes from the ports, and then they get on a chassis. And so you're meeting your customer where the customer wants to be. They want to be in the rails. Maybe they don't want to be, but they have to be. And having access to equipment is fantastic. I'm excited to watch this grow. I love intermodal. It's just fun watching. I've been to the port of Long Beach, watching these giant ships get unloaded by these massive cranes. Have you ever been to a port and watched that process unfold?
I have. Yeah.
Oh, they're fantastic.
It's unbelievable. It really is.
Do you go to IANA? Do you go to these intermodal association things?
I haven't gone. I was going to go last year, but it didn't work out. I do plan to go this year though.
Okay. So that for people watching, we'll find Matt over at the ATA conferences and hopefully IANA. I'll be there too, I suspect. So let's talk about like leadership. Like you're now the COO. You're the COO of a company that will have over 18,000 pieces of equipment. I mean, just for people watching, this is a massive fleet. This is a substantial fleet. How do you view leadership? What makes you excited about that opportunity?
Yeah, it's a funny thing, so I've always kind of subscribed to servant leadership without even knowing it. And I think the reason for that is that when I came into the company full time, it was very, very important to me, not just because of the relationships I had, but just because of how I am personally, that I wasn't viewed as the golden goose more than I had to be. Because there's really no escaping that label at the end of the day, no matter how hard you work. And I work hard and I try to work hard every day. But ultimately, by virtue of not wanting to be the golden goose, I would just do my best to just support everyone else as much as I could. And I wanted to be there to help anybody if they, I wanted to learn from everybody. And I think that transitioned into a servant leadership style pretty seamlessly, wherein, I would be looking to support my team members. I wouldn't expect them, obviously there's using the best use of my time, but at the end of the day, I'd be willing to do and have done anything that I would delegate to anyone at this company. I've done all of it at some point in my career. And, from my perspective, leadership's really about A, supporting your team as best as possible, B, holding annual reviews and semi-annual and one-to-ones on a monthly basis. Spending time with your team and actually getting to, speak to them personally and professionally is one of the most important things that I think a leader does and a manager does. It is the most important thing. And I think when things get busy, that stuff is the first thing to fall to the wayside. No, I've got to get my work done. I don't have time for that meeting to meet with my direct report. I'm going to push that to next month. It's the biggest disservice you can do yourself. It's the biggest disservice you can do your team, because that's where you're going to grow your next leaders. That's when you're going to help grow the company and sustain it, for years to come, because you're not always going to be doing the same thing you're doing in that role, later in your career necessarily anyway. So again, I think the biggest thing that I've learned, and I've tried really hard to get better about that, is just taking that time to have those personal conversations, ask them how they're doing. And I don't mean just passing by their desk, but normally sitting down for half an hour to an hour on a monthly basis. Some people that I work with, I'm part of Vistage, which is a peer advisory board. They sit down with their direct reports on a weekly basis and have those conversations. And I applaud them for doing that. But ultimately, that is the most important work we as leaders do. And again, I have found that when things get busy, it's the first thing that gets tossed out the window. And we just absolutely can't let that happen, because those are the opportunities to grow the organization, grow your direct reports, and grow yourself from a leadership perspective. That's really your time to shine as far as I'm concerned.
How are you able to wrestle with that during the age of COVID, like virtually, or how would you guys wrestle with those constraints? Because I'm with you, man. Talking with your direct reports as regularly as possible to get that temperature check or that understanding of what's going on. How can I make sure that you are being as successful as you can? How did you manage that?
So I'm going to give you the complete honest answer. Terribly.
Oh no. Okay.
I did not do a good job managing my my face-to-face with my direct reports over COVID. And I mean specifically when we were remote. As soon as we got back to the office, I kind of, I committed to them. I apologized to them and committed to them that I wouldn't let that happen again. But yeah, I didn't do a great job of managing that through COVID. I mean, was I talking to my direct reports on a daily basis? Absolutely. But I absolutely did not carve out the time to have that meaningful discussion. And quite frankly, it's embarrassing because everyone was really struggling during that time, myself included. And it probably would have been really meaningful and a really good opportunity for me to make those connections and further and deepen those relationships further. So it was a missed opportunity for me. I can't sugarcoat it.
Well, I admire you for being so candid and having the ability to say, yeah, this is how I failed. This is how I can learn from this. Because we don't learn a lot from success. I think we all want it, but there's not that come to the moment and go, this is what I need to do. But failure teaches us an awful lot. And it's great that you can identify, hey, this was an opportunity that I could do better at. And then you could talk with your team and build that relationship and build from a place of, hey, we all make mistakes. Like the worst day, we're all going to have a terrible day. And it's great that you guys are able to continue moving forward and building out these new pathways to keep that dialogue going. What are you most excited about for 2022? Like we're halfway through, right? Like we're basically getting towards the end. What else is happening?
We've secured a very large order with a port that
yes,
that we are going to be fulfilling on for the balance of the year. And I am really excited to execute that on that contract because it's going to give us some very good publicity.
Yeah.
And B, it's a fairly complex project. And I'll be honest, with the lack of equipment availability over the past couple of years, we have not had as much of an ability to attack those complex projects. I mean, for example, we actually, for one of our largest customers and longest lease customers, we provided and delivered 3,000 trailers throughout the United States and purchased approximately 2,400 of their used assets.
Wow, good for you. So buy and lease back.
Yeah. So we sold them brand new. Or provided them brand new, and we purchased their used assets. And ultimately, we designed a custom software solution to be able to process those used transactions on an efficient basis.
Wow.
Those are the types of things that we really love to do. Those are the types of things that I really love to do.
Yeah.
And with the lack of availability, it's just been more difficult to implement, to have those complex projects kind of come across, and they ultimately end up being the most profitable ones too. So kind of sucks, but I'm looking forward to getting, I'm looking forward for myself and our team to kind of dig into this one. And then obviously next year, as things kind of open up a little more, hopefully that's yet to be seen. We'll have our next big one, but this is definitely the biggest project I think we'll execute on probably in the last couple of years.
Oh man. The more complicated the problem, the more interesting it is to deal with. And I think that I'm kind of probably cut from the same cloth. Like I want complex problems because it requires so much more attention and figuring out how each puzzle piece fits together. I will be watching this. I was going to start listing off ports and say, is it Savannah or Houston, or is it Virginia? Is it Long Beach? Is it Oakland? But I won't do that. I'll just think about it in my head. That's exciting, dude. That is amazing. And I think that the fact that you could provide that level of equipment during these crazy times, like for people watching, we heard the prices of equipment goes up. This is a man who knows the cost of a trailer. And I will tell you, from my anecdotal evidence, I remember trailers used to be around $30,000 for a dry van, 53-foot swing door. And then they're like 60 or 70,000. Like, this is crazy. Will we ever see the $30,000 dry van again?
No.
Not even a pause. Will we see a $40,000 dry van?
Yeah, no, absolutely. Okay. I think when everything is said and done, they're probably going to settle in the high 30s.
Okay, that's fair.
I think, the problem is that everyone's getting paid more money. Everything's went up. You can't you can't reduce someone's salary. So, right. Cost of living has just gone up substantially. And I don't think it's ever going to go, it will never go back to the $30,000 trailer, but it certainly won't stay at the $50,000. There's no question about that. I mean, that is that is overly inflated due to the current market conditions. So we can probably expect, over time it to settle in that high 30s. That's what we're anticipating.
That's awesome.
Albeit we don't have a crystal ball, nor does anyone right now. And if I did, as I've told you before, Matt, you and I probably wouldn't be sitting here talking right now. So.
We'd be buying more trailers. No, so we're getting close to the timeline. For everybody who's watching, I appreciate you for taking the time. Matt, where can people find you? Where can they find more about your company and what you're up to?
Yeah, so you can go to our website, contractleasing.net. You can reach out to me anytime. I'm always open to having a discussion, to help out, to provide equipment, or just talk about the transportation industry. Love to learn from the subscribers to this podcast. Love to learn from Matt. He's a brilliant guy, and it's been a pleasure to work with him. And I really appreciate the opportunity to kind of talk to you folks today. It's been my first podcast, so it's been fun.
Yeah, the live stuff. Thank you as always. I think we're gonna go ahead and there's
Live
someone
stuff,
there's someone who's going to be doing like the stuff behind the scenes. So it gets all over. You people who are watching, you can go away. I'm going to talk to Matt for a little bit. Whoever controlling the stuff, you just hit those buttons. But it's been fun. Thank you for making time today.